Glad to be here, glad that you're here, glad that some of you maybe are joining us online, especially for those of you who are here for the first time. And let me just say this, we started this series last week, we're calling it More For You. And if you're not a Christian, or maybe if you're kind of new to faith, then it may have come as a little bit of a surprise, maybe caught you a little bit off guard last week when I started talking about this series, because it was like, maybe your thoughts was, okay, so I'll go listen to this guy. That sounds fine. There's some More For You stuff. Like, that sounds great. Like, tell me more. Like, I want to know more about the More For You. That sounds great. And yet, you got here, and then what I started talking about, I said something like this. I said, well, in order to follow Jesus, eventually, you will have to deny yourself to the point of dying to yourself. Not really the most encouraging kind of language. And maybe you were thinking, okay, I thought this was like, there is more for you, not there is more that we expect of you. Because that's kind of how that sounds a little bit. But the truth is, when it comes to walking with Jesus, and really not just being a Christian, being a follower of Jesus, and this is something Christians don't get right a lot of times. Not a lot of people actually experience this. But you get to the point where you realize that walking with Jesus is actually about getting to the point where you're denying that kind of natural instinct within yourself. The natural, because that's our flesh, that's kind of that natural sinful nature within each one of us that says, hey, this is all about me, it's all for me, what can I do for myself? And to work against that, actually, and to begin to live differently. And there's actually more for you and me, which is kind of the secret of the Christian life, on the other side of figuring this out. But not a lot of people live into this. So it's really this. This is essentially what we said last week. There's actually more for you by learning to say no to you and yes to Jesus. And that's not just a cute way to say this. This is the secret, the irony of following Jesus. That it really is about the more and more you give away of yourself, the more you realize life is fulfilling. But I'm just telling you, there is a small percentage of Christians who actually really discover this. They know Jesus, they come to church, they're following Jesus, but they haven't figured out the more. And it's because we can understand salvation and eternal life and miss the in-between. And miss the more that we can experience by living in the power of Jesus living within us. And I want us to experience that. I really want us all to experience that, because the people throughout history who have figured out to give, those who have given away more and more of themselves have been the ones to have the greatest impact and made the biggest difference in the lives of other people. The ones who figured that out. So today what I'd like to do is talk about how to do this. That's kind of what the next 3 weeks will be like. And there's a lot of ways, a lot of directions that we could take this. But I want to talk specifically about one area that I feel like is the more that doesn't seem like it's the more. It feels like more difficulty and more drudgery than it does more fulfillment and more joy. But it's just one of those things. And so I want to try to explain this. I'm going to use a passage from the Book of Galatians. It's actually not a book at all. It's actually a letter that a guy named Paul wrote to a group of people. It was really a group of Christians who were not Jews. They were Gentiles who, the Jews called all these people who weren't Jewish, they'd call them Gentiles. And it was not just one church, it was a collection of churches in an area called Galatia. It's north of the Mediterranean Sea. It's not there anymore. It's now modern day Turkey. So if you can kind of imagine where that is. I know we're not all geography majors here, but when I look it up on a map, it helps me, make sense. It's like, oh, Paul was there. That's cool. So this is the group of people he's talking to. But I need to give a little bit of context here. Kind of what's going on, because I think this really helps us understand what Paul is talking about, why he's writing these things. So first you have to know that first of all, Paul is a Jew. He is a Jew. And not just a Jew, he was a Jew among Jews. He was a part of a group of religious leaders called Pharisees. And so that was a big deal. And for them, it was all about learning how to follow the law of Moses. This is what, to know and to follow the law of Moses was not just important. It was literally a way of life. It was all they knew. It was every single part of moving and breathing and living. Every decision they made, that's how important it was to them. But then one day, Paul, this Jewish leader, became a Christian. He became a follower of Jesus. And so that became his primary focus. It shifted from following the law of Moses to, well, now how can I follow Jesus? And so for him, like so many Jews who had become Christians, they were trying to discover, because you can imagine the tension here, what is it like to be a Jew who thinks the law of Moses is so incredibly important, we have for a couple of thousand years now, and yet now I find it so incredibly important to follow Jesus and his teachings. So what do we do with that? And they were trying to figure that out. And so to make it even more confusing is there were these Gentiles now, these non-Jewish people who were coming to faith in Jesus. These Gentiles were beginning to put their faith in Jesus. They were becoming Christians and were wanting to follow Jesus. But the thing is, they didn't know anything about the law of Moses. And honestly, they didn't really care to. But as you can imagine, there was another group of people, these Jewish Christians now, who were thinking, no, that can't be right. We've got to do something about that. We think the Gentiles ought to become Jewish and begin to know and follow the law of Moses before they can become Christians. That's literally, that's what they wanted to do. Paul referred to them as Judaizers. And boy, he had some choice words for them. He really did. I mean, if we were to interpret Paul's language in today's vernacular, it probably wouldn't be real pretty, especially on Urban Dictionary. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just would not be pretty. And so when he learned of this, that this teaching was going on, he wrote this letter, and he was mad. Like it was like a holy, anger. He wanted to write back to these people and wanted to remind them, no. Something's different. And listen to what he writes. This is Galatians chapter 5. You're probably familiar with this. It's for freedom that Christ has set us free. Set us free. That's the language that Paul's using here. He has set you free. Well, free from what? Free from the law. In other words, what you once knew was that you had a relationship with the law of Moses. That it was all about, like, your relationship with God was about getting to him and doing the right things and saying the right things and, holding your head the right way and doing things at the right time of the day and the right time of the year in order to make yourself right with God. But I'm telling you, you've been set free from that because that didn't work. Christ has now come, and so he has accomplished the law for you, and now you've been set free from that. You can live differently. You've been set free. Which, didn't sound too bad. And so then he continues, verse 13, he says, you, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free. And there's that free language again. Of course, I imagine the Gentiles, kind of like you and me, were thinking, okay, I like free talk. That sounds awesome. Like when people tell me I'm free, like that, you remember being young and discovering that first little bit of freedom? Come on. And we can probably all relate because in our culture, when you get to be 15 and 16 years old, that's like the first moment of freedom. You know what I'm saying? You get in the car and you start driving for the first time on your own. You've got your mom's Cadillac under your foot and you're free. I remember this. This is the first time. I'm speaking from experience. You know what I'm saying? That's the kind of freedom I'm thinking about. Sounding, free, that sounds awesome. Roll down the windows, and I remember that song came on, and it's like, I'm free. Free falling. You know what I'm saying? Come on. Somebody has done that. Somebody has pulled a Tom Cruise, Jerry Maguire moment, and you've rolled down the windows in the car, and you're screaming, I'm free, at the top of your lungs. Maybe it was just me. That's fine. But you know what I'm talking about, that moment that you just feel free. And the Gentiles, when Paul used this language, and anybody else, it sounded great to them. I'm free. I've been set free. I've been set free from the law, and I'm free to kind of do what I want and figure out things that I want. And I'm, now I can live how I want and do what I want and live for myself and do for myself. That sounds great. I'm free. But Paul didn't stop there. It's always that gummit. That's the whole, that's the whole Christian thing. It's always a catch. But this is so important. So tune back in with me if you've tuned out for a second. This is so key. And I'm telling you that what Paul is about to share, what Paul is about to talk about, I'm telling you, has the potential to change your life. At the very least, to change your relationships. And most of the time, our lives are made up of relationships. With the people that we live with, that we're married to, our kids, our siblings, our colleagues, the people we work with, our bosses, even people we hate, people that we don't like. What Paul is about to share has the potential to get you to that other side of the more that you've been longing for. And it has the potential to change things relationally that you never thought possible. That's how big a deal, that's how important this is. Okay, exciting. So what does Paul say? He says, but don't use your freedom to indulge the flesh. What in the world is he talking about? What's the flesh, you say? The part of you that only cares about you. That's your flesh. Guess what? We've all got that. It's in all of us. We all have that part of you that only cares about you, that only wants to do what you want to do, what you desire, to go in the direction that you want to go, that wants to use relationships and circumstances to benefit you. That is a natural instinct. And Paul is saying that is in you. That's in each one of us. But he's saying, but don't use your freedom, because we want to say, sweet, I've been set free, awesome. Let's go break some rules. Let's go break some laws. Let's put the pedal to the metal, baby. And let's go maximize and use all of our freedom for our benefit. That is a natural human sinful instinct in every one of us. And you see it all the time. And Paul says, you've been set free, and you no longer have to relate to God based on law. You now relate to him based on your faith in Jesus, but that doesn't mean that your freedom is to be used to gratify your own sinful flesh. Okay, well then, so what do we do? And this is where this is the game changer. Listen to what Paul says. Instead, rather, serve. Serve, like the opposite. Deny yourself. Take up your cross. Follow me. Serve one another humbly in love. Well, that's not really what I was expecting. That doesn't sound that great. In other words, he's saying, when you've got these relationships with other people, and you begin to notice within yourself, and this is what Christians have to do. This is kind of that convicting power of the Holy Spirit. If you haven't gotten there, you will if you're a Christian. And if you're actually, this is how you know you're growing. You're growing. You always want to know, it's like, well, how do I know I'm growing spiritually? Okay, when you begin to notice things about yourself that shouldn't be a part of yourself. Okay, that's when you know. It's like, oh, I used to not care. Now I do. And when you begin to notice that thing within yourself that only wants to serve itself, then you know what damage it can do in your relationships if you don't get it under control. You know what it can do to you. And so instead, here's the answer. If you want to figure out how to, and this is one of those more things, it's like relationally first. There's relationally so much more in this principle. And he's saying when you want to create healthy relationships, then you need to learn how to do this. To serve one another. Oh, okay. Serve people you don't know, people you do know, people you like, people you don't like, people you live with, people you don't live with. To serve them. How do you do that? You serve them. Well, what does it mean to serve? Okay, well, if you see a need, you meet it. If you see something to be done, you do it. I mean, let's put it real simple here. If you see a need, meet it. If you see something to be done, do it. And it's not just about waiting for, you to feel right or for it to feel really good. It's not waiting on it to, when the timing's right or I'll have a little bit extra time. Instead, it's really about always looking for opportunities. And here's what's unique about this. Paul is saying, because you got to kind of put all this together. Paul is saying, you've been set free, But don't use your freedom just for yourself. Instead, use your freedom to serve other people humbly in love. In other words, you're free from the law and having to do something. In other words, it's no longer a command. Now it's something you can choose to do. It's actually an opportunity. Well, what difference does that make? This is the difference. And here's part of the more. You now have an opportunity to make an impact relationally that you didn't have before. Watch this. And parents, you will get this, okay? You will understand this for sure. It's the difference between you asking and telling your kids to clean their room and them choosing to clean their room on their own. Which one do you prefer, right? Because only one actually happens very often for most of us. You know, on the one hand, it's like you ask them, you tell them, like, you've got to clean your room. And what do? Well, they gripe and they complain and they whine a little bit, and then they don't do a real good job, or they forget. I forgot. And then they don't do it at all, like that. Oh, man, I mean, that's my favorite. Or there's, you know, all of a sudden, those special occasions where they just make the decision, they choose, you know, I'm just going to clean my room, like, because I saw it, and what happens in that moment? They're actually kind of excited. That's what my kids do. I mean, it's like unbelievable. Like, they're actually excited. They have fun, they do a good job, and they cannot wait to finish. Like, they don't even let us come in. Stay out. You know, we're doing something in here. And then they come get us, and they show us what they've done. Shoey's my favorite. Anytime she picks up, like, you know, 6 items off the floor in the living room, she walks in and says, and we have to figure out what she's talking about. It's like, you cleaned the floor. Because it's like she just piled everything on the chair, but it's off the floor. Look what I've done. But I'm telling you, what does that do for you as a parent? It says that they were thinking about me. I didn't tell them to do this. They chose to do it. Wow. That means they were honoring me. They were loving me. They were caring for me. Wow. This wasn't even about them, but it made them better too, didn't it? It made them excited. It made them have fun. It made them see how fun it is to please somebody else. And it's exciting. And the impact it has relationally is unbelievable. And the same is true. And it's not about, you know, your freedom from, oh, I'm not free, you know, I'm free. I can do whatever I want. I don't have to take out the trash. I don't have to clean the dishes. I don't have to clean my room. I don't have to wash the car. Instead, it's now, I'm going to choose to. Not because I want to or because it feels great, but because I want to serve you. I want to serve you. For the entire law. Now, remember, he's talking mostly to Gentiles here who don't know the law. And so he says, for the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command. Love your neighbor as yourself. You don't know the law? Fine. I don't think you have to know the law. You don't have to go back and become a law of Moses follower. Don't listen to these Judaizers. That's not what it's about. You've been set free from that. Christ accomplished that for you. That's not what it's about. It's a new kind of relationship, but it's one that's based on this one thing. You want to know how to keep the law? Just love everybody as you love yourself. And you're going to keep the law. You're going to accomplish it. It's going to be wonderful. You don't have to worry about trying to do every little thing. That's the one thing. That's why it's not about the law. Just do this. Love one another as you love yourself. Or there will be consequences, and you know this is true. And God would say, it's not, well, I want to wait till my mood's right. I want to wait till it kind of hits me just right. I want to, wait till I got some time. He's saying, no. Just serve. You want to know what I want you to do? Serve one another. Why? Because relationally, it's going to wreak havoc on your relationships if you choose not to. And he says, this is the consequence. He gives the consequence. It's kind of a weird word picture, but pay attention. If you bite and devour each other, watch out, or you will be destroyed by each other. You know what this is? If you continue to exercise and use your freedom for your own good, and you only serve yourself and what you want and your desires in the direction you want to go and to benefit yourself only, you're going to destroy each other. And you know what the consequence of that is? Because you know this is true. Watch this. If you continue only to serve yourself, eventually you will be all by yourself. I didn't have to tell you that. You know that. Why? Because selfishness breeds isolation. Write it down. Don't wait on this to become true for you to know that it's true. You see, this is why some of you, because it's not just isolation physically from people, right? I mean, you can live in a household full of a bunch of people and work at a place where there's a whole bunch of people and yet feel totally alone. And it's because everybody there is vying for their own spot and they're working for their own, they're kind of building their own kingdom and building their own castles, and they're only concerned about really serving themselves and kind of using relationships to kind of get the next leg up or to leverage it, or hey, go get me another beer, or hey, I'm home, I'm tired, do this for me, or I expect this of you, instead of using every opportunity to serve. And all it has done is created walls within those relationships, and now you feel isolated, and you didn't even realize that you had gotten there. You've allowed yourself relationally to get to a place that you never dreamed possible. You never thought it was possible. I never imagined. There are things happening in my life, and I didn't want them to happen, but I didn't know that this might be one of the primary causes. And then Paul sums it all up, and he says it this way. He says, so I say, this is the difference. Walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. He's saying, so as you continue to learn how to follow Jesus and to walk according to his Spirit within you, watch out, because he is going to lead you in the direction of serving others and not yourself. That's what's going to happen. Now, when I talk about things like this, serving and, laying yourself down and not gratifying your flesh and all of those things, it always comes with pushback. Like, I know that. Because we have the scenario in our mind of, well, you just don't understand, and, love my enemies and love people. I get it, but they're not serving me, and I mean, isn't this a two-way street? And there's all kinds of pushback, all kinds of reasons and excuses. But here's the thing. I want to give you another incentive. So if it's not enough relationally, like, well, they don't deserve it, or, I'm not getting it, or it's just too much water under the bridge, it's been too long, whatever. So let me give you another incentive for you. When you choose to serve someone, whoever it is, whether or not it's deserved, you break the chain of self-centeredness in your life. This may be the thing that's actually holding you back. This may be the thing that's actually keeping you from growing in your relationship with Jesus, from really discovering the more of being a follower of Jesus. This may be the thing. Self-centeredness, selfishness. And until you recognize that it's there, you will never know how to unlock the keys to those chains. And yet Jesus has set you free from that. He's already broken those chains, but we're just really good at wrapping ourselves back up in them. Why? Well, because the sinful nature is still there. We all know it. It's like, well, man, I thought I became a Christian. I thought Jesus was in my heart now. Why am I still? It's because we're human, and our human nature is now at odds with the Spirit that is within us. And there's tension constantly. And there's a constant tug of war with our heart, for our heart. So here's what I want to do. I want to close today by looking, and this was kind of like an add-on toward the end of my prep. Excuse me. I'm going to get some water. So I was thinking about, within the context of what I just talked about, this idea of, Paul's idea of serving, and, even those who you don't get along with, and your enemies, and loving your neighbor as you love yourself. And of course, I went back to the story of Jesus, and story you're very familiar with. And I just want to look at a snippet, just a snapshot from the very end of Jesus' life. You'll be familiar with it. But there's a verse in here that is really easy to skip over, to not notice. But when you read it within the context of what we just talked about, it is sobering. I'm telling you, like, it will cause you to rethink, to reconsider maybe your position, some of the pushback that we tend to give when we hear things like this. And so let me give you some context. Jesus is right at the end of his life and ministry. And in spite of all of his miracles and his wonderful things and his teaching and the incredible things he's done, everybody he's healed, in spite of that, the vast majority of people who were following him have abandoned him. And the only people left are, just a few of his followers, including those 12 guys who started out with him at the very beginning. And he is now sharing a final meal together with them. And Jesus knows what's about to happen. This is the key here. It's what Jesus already knows at this point. Okay? Jesus already knows what's about to happen, what's about to take place. He knows that he's about to go to the cross. And he's sitting at, this final dinner with this group of 12, his kind of faithful few. And yet, he knows something. He knows that Judas is sitting right here. And that Judas is, in just a few hours, is going to betray him. And he knows it. And then over here, you've got Simon Peter. And Simon is going to deny Jesus in just a few hours. And Jesus knows it. And then the other 10 guys, the rest of these jokers that we don't know quite as much about, they're all going to run away and abandon Jesus in his time of greatest need. And Jesus knows it. And yet watch what John, who was there that night, listen to what he records. He says, the evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon. Judas had already made the deal. Like that ball was in motion. Jesus knew it. And that he was going to betray Jesus. He had already set that up. But listen to this next verse. Jesus knew that the Father, John stuck it into this spot for a reason. In this moment, Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and was returning to God. Now, try to put myself in those shoes, like, impossible, right? I'm not suggesting I could be Jesus, but just try to imagine for a second this scenario of, okay, so I'm sitting at a table and I already know this guy has betrayed me. This guy is going to deny me more than once. And the rest of these jokers, they're going to desert me. I already know it. But I also know that my Heavenly Father has given me power over all things, including all people. What am I going to do? I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to preach to these jokers. I'm about to slap some people. But there's about to be a come to Jesus meeting. In this Jesus meeting, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I'm thinking. I've got, sweet, I've got all power, all authority. It has been laid in my lap, and here are these bunch of betrayers, deniers, and deserters sitting with me at this table, acting like they're cool, and I tell you what I'm about to do. That's kind of what I'm thinking. What does Jesus do? This is John, who was sitting there, and he said, but he got up from the meal, he took off his outer clothing, and he wrapped the towel around his waist. And after that, he poured water into a basin, and he began to wash his disciples' nasty, stinky, dirty feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. And then after he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes, he returned to his place, and he said, now do you understand what I have just done for you? you imagine what Judas was thinking in this moment? Can you even imagine? I can't. Ooh. Laying it on thick, Jesus. See, you call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. I am your teacher. I am your Lord. You're my disciples, and you're to follow me. You're a follower of me. That's what he's saying. So now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, guess what? You should wash one another's feet. Let me make it real clear. I want you to wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Oh, Jesus, that's not cool. I'm not sure I want to do that. Do you mean when I feel like it? Mm-mm. Do you mean when, like, the mood hits me, or when I get the little tug in my spirit? Mm-mm. Do you mean when, like, the circumstances kind of get just right and everything's good and, like, I've got time? Mm-mm. No, I just mean I want you to serve one another. You see, Jesus knew who was at the table with him. And he washed the feet. He served a betrayer, and who he knew was going to betray him. He served all these deserters. He served a denier. And then a few hours later, he would hang on a cross and die for them. And so he just said, so what I want you to do is I want you to go into all the world, and you know what I want you to do is I just want you to do what I've just done for you. I want you to serve one another that way. I don't want you to exercise your freedom or what you feel is right for you or because you deserve something. I don't want you to use your freedom now for your own gain. I want you to use your freedom to serve other people. At one point it was a command. You had to. But now you get the choice. What a beautiful irony. You have the choice. You get the beautiful opportunity, because how incredible that feels when somebody chooses to do something for you. You have the opportunity to do relationally in your relationships with other people and within your own life and the chains that are holding you back. You have an opportunity now to do something that you would never be able to realize otherwise, because there's more. And you see, I cannot convince you of that. Like, this is not something I can convince you of. I can't just read some verses and get some music playing and say things the right way to get you to see this. It's why so many Christians never see it, because we have our reasons. Cannot be talking about me. I'm just telling you. Test me on this one. This is one of those, like, just test me on this one. When you will experience so much more than you ever imagined. Just test me on this one. When you get to the other side of denying yourself, laying aside your own wants and desires, and serving other people. Those you're married to, your kids, your spouse, your siblings, your coworkers, your colleagues, your bosses, people that you don't like, people you would consider unfriendly, people you would consider your enemies, people who have hurt you, people who have denied you, people who have betrayed you, people who have walked away and deserted you in your time of need, people who have been unfaithful and unfair to you. You know what I want you to do for them? I want you to serve them. And not because you have to, but because I've done that for you. That's why. And I'm just telling you that on the other side of that, if you'll trust me on this, you will experience more than you ever imagined when you serve one another humbly in love. Heavenly Father, this is a difficult word. Man, it is, we've heard it before. Nothing new here. We've heard this before. Oh yeah, we're supposed to serve other people, but man, we always just think, but my circumstance is different. My situation is different. I understand that. I know that feeling. That's in every one of us. That's that flesh. But God, I truly believe that you've got so much more for every single one of us when we make the decision, when we choose to set aside our rights and our freedoms and instead serve one another humbly in love. There's more than we could ask or imagine in our relationships with other people, within ourselves, and what we're bound to, and in our relationship with you. Jesus, we love you, and we praise you. Thank you for your word. Now, if you just keep your heads bowed for just a second, I just want to talk to those who you may not be following Jesus, and this may be the kind of message that tells you, I want to pick up what I got and run for the hills. But maybe, just maybe, you realize now that this is actually the answer that you've been looking for. That what Jesus has done for you is worth doing for others. But you've just not stepped into that relationship. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to do that, to begin that today. And we want to walk alongside you in that process. And you can just pray something like this along with me. A prayer doesn't fix you and it doesn't save you. A prayer is simply a declaration of what's true in your heart. Something like this. Jesus, thank you for what you did for me, for your example, for serving me, and dying for me, even when you knew what I'm capable of. Father, I'm trusting in your forgiveness today. I put my faith in you because I know I need you. I'm a sinner. I'm lost without you. And I want to follow you with everything I've got through your Spirit and for your glory. And it's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.